everyone. Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton. I'm here for our weekly update on social media. Thanks for joining us. It's just a few days until the election. I'll give you the latest in terms of election law updates, a spectacular ruling from the Fifth Circuit about the counting of ballots after Election Day, specifically received after Election Day, a remarkable result as a result of Judicial Watch's litigation. New Secret Service documents further documenting their corruption and deceit that are going to be shocking to you. More corruption at the Biden White House, altering documents. And on top of that, we have this new coordinated, seemingly censorship, suppression, smear operation directed at yours truly and Judicial Watch and other conservatives who are out there speaking truth to power. First up is, I guess, the big news, and it's worth repeating because you may have missed it. The Supreme Court ruled in favor of the Commonwealth of Virginia in their battle against the Biden Justice Department and allied leftist judges at the lower levels to force them to put non-citizens back onto the voter rolls and prevent them from taking people who identify as non-citizens off the voting rolls. So a lower district court judge ruled in favor of the Biden-Harris Justice Department. So Virginia lost there. They went up to the left-leaning Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. Virginia lost there as well. And then Virginia appealed it immediately to the Supreme Court. And 6 justices, in a strong majority, said that, no, Virginia can keep on doing what it's doing effectively. What's remarkable about that decision is that the 3 justices appointed by Obama, Biden, Harris, right? Justices Sotomayor, Justice Kagan, and Justice Jackson all voted effectively to force Virginia to put non-citizens on the rolls. So that's frankly a disturbing result because this should have been a 9-0 decision based on the law and practicalities in terms of what the Justice Department can do to force states to maintain their roles one way or the other in a week or two before the election. And I said it once and I'll say it again. The fact that the Biden-Harris Justice Department sued Virginia to force them to put non-citizens on the rolls, thankfully the Supreme Court intervened and stopped it, is proof positive, to me at least, that the left wants non-citizens to vote in the elections. Because if you make sure they're on the rolls, you're providing them opportunities to vote. There was a case out in Michigan, it occurs to me, this week that was announced. There's charges been brought against a Chinese national, a student who registered to vote and then voted. And the only reason he's been caught is because he called up and said, I want my ballot back. And I guess some of the election officials were smart enough to put 2 and 2 together and figured out that he had voted illegally. But again, the only reason we found out about it is because he turned himself in. And it's a further indication we need to strengthen the federal laws out there. There's a federal law that prohibits non-citizens from voting or registering to vote and voting in elections. But as I've described, it's a Scouts Honor law. It means the law says that you can't attest falsely that you're a citizen in order to vote, but there's no verification required for citizenship status. And that needs to be done. Because otherwise, there's no way of checking. I shouldn't say there's no way of checking, but it's insufficient. And the American people want it. The Gallup poll just released a week or so ago shows over 80% of Americans want it, including a majority of Democrats, a strong majority, over 65%. So, but the leftist leadership, the politicians in the thrall of the left really hate the idea of citizenship, right? They don't want citizens to run this country. I mean, their idea and their fantasy is that we're some sort of one world where everyone can vote in everyone's elections, and they're really national governments go the way of the dinosaur. And this is part of really an extremist left-wing movement to destroy citizenship in the United States, the very concept of it. And this is why I wrote my new book, Rights and Freedoms in Peril, an investigative report on the last attack on America. I talk about the threat of non-citizens, their presence, and other issues as it relates to our right to govern ourselves. But who should govern us? Non-citizens or citizens? Should Congress answer to Americans or to non-citizens? Should the president answer to Americans or non-citizens? And the book's on sale now. It's all over. I was traveling this week. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but it's in the bookstores in the airport. So if you're in the airport, stop by and pick up the book. And if you don't see it, ask for it. Because if you ask for it, the booksellers take notice. And it's been selling well. Rights and Freedoms in Peril. It's essential reading. And I tell you, if you're watching this video before the election, you should buy it. And go straight to the election section. What's the chapter? You think I would have that all memorized by now? An election like any other. I talk about 2020, and the question is 2024 going to be like 2020? That's why you got to read the book. And I know a lot of folks are asking, I know everyone asks me, I shouldn't say everyone, many ask, what do I think is going to happen on Election Day? I don't know what's going to happen on Election Day, and no one really knows for sure. I have my personal suspicions. I tend to think Trump is more likely to win than Kamala Harris. I tend to think that Congress is going to be Republican, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure. And from Judicial Watch's perspective, it doesn't really matter who wins in the sense that we still have a job to do. And as a citizen, I think you should take the same approach. It doesn't matter who you support, Harris or Trump, or even a third-party candidate, I don't know. But there's always work to do for citizens. I mean, the vigilance must continue. But in terms of the election outcomes and disputes about the elections, which I think is something I can really get into, it's there are three outcomes in the election, in my view, or the three most likely outcomes, because there's always something weird that could happen. I can't even fathom. Kamala Harris wins outright. It's election night. There's no doubt she won. There's no votes that are going to change the election, and she's declared essentially the winner, and the party's over. Similarly, Trump wins on election night. No doubt he won. There are no votes that are going to change the outcome that are outstanding. Party's over. And then there's the third result, which is the 2020 result, is that there is no candidate who is declared the winner on Election Day, essentially. That's unclear who won. And my view is, based on prior experience, if we don't know who won on Election Day, Trump's going to lose, because of what I believe to be illicit voting, or no, illicit counting of votes past Election Day. In 2020, Trump had the votes to win the election on election night, and those results changed as a result of unprecedented counting after Election Day. And if that happens again, I think Trump's going to lose. And I think it would be an illicit result, certainly in the least a controversial result, and we'll just have a 2020 dispute all over again about how the elections were run. So that's what's going to happen, I think, one way or the other. One of those three results. I tend to think that Kamala Harris isn't going to be able to win outright, but we'll see. Who knows? I don't know. I don't know. In the meantime, but Judicial Watch will provide independent oversight of the elections, right? So it's not to achieve a result because we like or dislike a candidate. It's to ensure that the rule of law as it relates to elections are upheld. And as I announced last week, Judicial Watch will have a team in Wisconsin, or teams in Wisconsin, monitoring the polls. And I did a little video describing our work in this regard. Hey everyone, we've got some big news. Judicial Watch election monitoring teams will be on the ground in Wisconsin to watch the polls on election day. We will be there to expose and deter any fraud. On top of that, we have a national election integrity monitoring program that allows voters like you to contact us if they run into any issues at the polls, see anything suspicious, have issues with machines. You know what the issues potentially could be. Report any of that to us directly at electionlaw@judicialwatch.org, electionlaw@judicialwatch.org. Again, Judicial Watch is committed to the heavy lifting to ensure fair and clean elections for you. So our election teams will be run by Bob Popper, who's a former senior official in the Justice Department as it relates to voting and law enforcement, election law enforcement. And so we're going to be there carefully monitoring the polls where we can. And because Wisconsin obviously is a place that is important in this election, so I think it's important to have independent observers there. And it's just a straightforward, we're not there to make noise, we're there to observe, report. Hopefully our presence, our team's presence deters fraud, and hopefully our presence also, to the degree any fraud exists, allows us to uncover it because we're there seeing what might happen in person. In addition, we're going to rely on you to report issues as it relates to the elections as well. This is why we stood up the Judicial Watch Election Fraud Report Line. Again, go to, you just send an email to electionlaw@judicialwatch.org, electionlaw@judicialwatch.org, and just send the emails. And if, and you may think it's unimportant, and it actually may be unimportant, but unless we see the email, we can't judge whether it's important or not. Now, maybe we can't pursue every lead that you send us. But again, we can't pursue leads you don't send us. So don't be shy about using the email. Okay, if there's something that's concerning to you, and you're a voter, you've been voting, probably many of you watching this have been voting for some time, you know what's up and what's down in the voting process. And if you follow Judicial Watch, you certainly know, what issues might arise when you go to vote. So if there are any issues that pop up, do let us know. And as we describe in our the page here, we'll provide a link to it. There are 3 things you need to do. If there's an issue, tell calmly, but directly, your local polling officials what's going on. Call your state's election hotline. You can look that up pretty easily, and also send an email to Judicial Watch. And never, ever get into a confrontation with another voter. Stay calm. Talk to the officials, send an email to Judicial Watch. So that's pretty easy to remember. In the meantime, we've got craziness in the last days of the campaign that's led to misconduct by President Biden or his White House staff. So Trump had this big rally at Madison Square Garden. I talked about this last time. The left was trying to smear him as being a Nazi for holding a rally in Madison Square Garden because supporters of Nazi Germany did that, 70 years ago, 80 years ago? So all the conventions and other political events since then haven't been Nazi conventions other than Trump holding an event. So that was, completely silly politics. But then on top of that, you had President, let's see, there was a comedian who, for all the noise, I haven't seen the original joke. And I guess it's offensive, so we shouldn't play it. Anyway, he made a derogatory comment and a joke about Puerto Rico being garbage or something like that. I don't know the exact quote. And Joe Biden, who is suffering obviously from dementia, gave an unhinged response, and here's the response.
Or Puerto Rico, where I'm in my home state of Delaware, they're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization is seen as unconscionable, and it's un-American.
So he called President Trump supporters garbage. And rather than, I think I put out a tweet. Do we have the tweet? I say, why doesn't whoever is running the Biden administration just have Joe Biden apologize for the garbage comment? I mean, he could have easily said, and most people understand he misspeaks a lot, I didn't mean to call all supporters of Trump garbage. I was talking about the comment. That was garbage. Or something else where he says, obviously I didn't mean to say that. But instead, it was this, like, I hate to use, I shouldn't say I hate to use the word, but it is like an Orwellian obsession, communist, Marxist obsession with just like trying to change reality by manipulating language and the truth. And they're trying to pretend that he didn't say what he said. And I first heard, and it didn't click. Believe it or not, I don't, especially these day-to-day kerfuffles, I try not to get too involved in them because, it all becomes mania after a while. And it's all passing in the sense of, this is just the hyperbole and fever-like talking related to a pending election within days. Then I heard like the apostrophe excuse. And I'm like, I can't even imagine what that is. And then I saw this AP story. And of course, Trump drove them crazy, by the way, by showing up. We have the video. He put it out on his True Social website. Let's show that picture before we get in that. So he's trying to,
How do you like my garbage truck?
Turn it into
This truck is in honor of Kamala and Joe
Biden.
Biden.
By showing up in a garbage truck, which was kind of funny, and wearing the orange. I mean, I think it's an apolitical comment to say it's kind of funny, but I don't know, other people may think it wasn't funny. And so it became an issue for the Democrats because of what he said. And so, like I said, rather than apologize, they engaged in Orwellian manipulation of language and insulted virtually every American on planet Earth and anyone else with two brain cells to ignore what, pretend Biden didn't say what he said. They could have said even what he meant to say was X. But that would mean that it would be an acknowledgement of wrongdoing by Biden, who, by the way, on another matter, it's like completely out of it. Did you see this crazy video about him biting babies? Did we have that around? So, and there's another video of him biting another baby's leg. Now, he's playfully doing it, but it's not normal behavior for a president. Playfully biting babies. And, the issue to me is Kamala Harris is one of the responsible officials under the 25th Amendment. And she's been inexcusably AWOL on his obvious dementia, which I would argue was part of this garbage comment. Although she tried to run away from it a little bit. She says she didn't. She says he clarified his comments. He didn't clarify his comments. He didn't even apologize. Here's the tweet of what whoever is running the Biden White House put out. Read that. I referred to the hateful rhetoric about Puerto Rico spewed by Trump's supporter as garbage, which is the only word I can think to describe it. That's all I meant to say. The comments at that rally don't reflect who we are as a nation. So no apology. And then the AP, which is no conservative outlet, it's a left-wing outlet, reported the following. The Biden White House altered records of Biden's garbage remarks despite stenographers' concerns. So there's an official, and we've investigated this, Judicial Watch is investigating this issue. There is a White House stenographer's office. I think I had a, hold on one second. Tick tock here. I have some detail to share with you. Give me a second, everyone. Well, anyway, hold on one second. So we tried to figure out from where this complaint came from about the stenographer complaints. And there's a stenographer's office. It's called the Stenography Office, and it's in the Executive Office of the President. And there are 6 employees there. And I have the names. So they're civil servants. They're there no matter who's president. And so they did an official transcript of this. And according to the AP, the White House press office, in consultation with Biden, altered the transcript. Biden, according to a transcript prepared by the official White House stenographer, so this is the official document that I would argue is a presidential record, which is a legal issue for the White House if they were messing with it. This is what he said, and you saw it too. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization of Latinos is unconscionable and it's un-American. Okay? But the transcript released by the White House press office rendered the quote with an apostrophe. Reading supporters. You see that? They took away, moved the S, added an apostrophe, rather than supporters, which aides said pointed to Biden criticizing Hinchcliffe, who was the comedian. Why are we talking about a comedian's joke in a presidential campaign is beyond me. Not the millions of Americans who are supporting Trump for president. And sure enough, the notorious deputy press secretary, or one of the press officials, Andrew Bates, posted the fake quote up on his Twitter. Can we find that? Did we find that? Let's go down to where he posted it. Scroll. Show the screen and scroll so I can read it. Scroll. Well, these seem, well, you're not going to find it because you're not logged into Twitter. Well, anyway, he quoted the tweet. Or he quoted the statement in a tweet. So he put out false information, right? And the White House personnel, the civil service people, were upset about this, what they call the spoliation. According to the AP, I think I set it apart here. I'm sorry, everyone. Normally I'm a little bit so the change was made after the press office conferred with the president. And this is according to an email that evidently had been linked to the Post. It was from the head of the office. And the email's, it's authentic. The AP confirmed it. The supervisor in the email called the press office's handling of the matter, quote, a breach of protocol and spoliation of transcript integrity between the stenography and press offices. If there is a difference in interpretation, the press office may choose to withhold the transcript but cannot edit it independently. Our stenography office transcript released to our distro, meaning distribution list, which includes the National Archives, hence it being a presidential record, it looks like, is now different than the version edited and released by the public by press office staff. So this is a substantial legal issue. You know, based on the Trump rules, right, we're all now, you know, the rules for Trump, we're all supposed to be very sensitive about protecting the authenticity of presidential records and securing them. And here they edited them in a way that, according to the head of the stenography office, was spoliation. Look up that word, spoliation. I'm going to look up that word. I know what it means generally, but it has a legal connotation, and I thought it was interesting that the stenographer used the initial dictionary. What is spoliation in law? This is what Google says. Spoliation means the suppression or destruction of evidence. It can also mean the alteration of evidence. Not good. Not good. So Bates posted it, and it became part of the left-wing media political complex defense of Biden calling tens of millions of Americans garbage. And now they've raised, you know, an issue that requires law enforcement investigation, as best I can tell. And of course, this isn't the first time they've messed with records, because Judicial Watch found that through our FOIA lawsuit, remember, over the transcript of Joe Biden's interview with the special counsel, the Garland Justice Department came in and altered an official court reporter transcript, or the transcript taken by the FBI, whoever did it, but it's the sort of thing that you don't mess with because it was created by a stenographer or a court reporter. And they edited it to take out the pauses and words, you know, the ums. You know, we all say those. I shouldn't say we all say them. Many of us do. I just did one, you know, right? That's kind of a pause, a way of describing verbally a pause in your brain, right? You're looking for time. You need a little time, right? So when someone says it suggests they don't know what they're saying or what they're about to say. And in the case of Joe Biden, it would suggest about issues about his mental capacity, which is why, in my view, they were edited. So anyway, this is at least the second instance of the Biden administration editing material, official material, court or White House presidential records, it looks like, to help Joe Biden out. And in this case, to help Kamala Harris out. So it wasn't about protecting Joe Biden, it was also about providing cover for Kamala Harris. So this comedian makes this garbage comment about Puerto Rico, and it leads to crimes in the Biden White House. I mean, it's been quite a week, hasn't it? Oh boy. So we talked about the Supreme Court on election integrity. But the biggest news of the week, in my view, I mentioned it last week, but I didn't get a chance to look at the opinion, was a massive victory by Judicial Watch. And as I talked about, our election law team is second to none. In this case, Russ Nobile, one of our lawyers, was leading this case. We obtained a massive victory from the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, finding that the counting of ballots received after Election Day is contrary to federal law. Massive victory. It may not be imposed on Mississippi, which is the state that was counting the ballots after Election Day for 5 days, received after Election Day. 5 days after Election Day, they were still going to be able to take ballots and count them. But it's a massive victory in terms of, for the first time, an appellate court has found what I think is an obvious point, that Election Day means Election Day. And we've done an animated video kind of highlighting and explaining what the issue's about. So let's run this.
Some states allow votes to be received and counted after Election Day, in violation of existing election law. Federal law says the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November of every even-numbered year is Election Day for federal elections. Extending the counting of ballots runs counter to federal law and invites fraud and undermines voter confidence. Right now, Judicial Watch is suing Illinois and Mississippi for allowing ballots to be received and counted days and weeks after Election Day if the ballots are dated on or before Election Day. As you can see, Judicial Watch is hard at work ensuring our elections are fair and honest. And you can be assured we are ready to do the heavy lifting to make sure they stay that way, because no one is above the law.
So isn't that great? We're out there educating folks, and then we get this key victory on the Fifth Circuit. And, we've been pushing this issue for years. We filed really the first comprehensive lawsuit. I think there were issues about this in 2020, but we really got it perfected in terms of what the legal argument would be in our lawsuit filed against Illinois in 2022. Now, that case is on hold because the courts found that candidates don't have standing to challenge the potential illegal counting of ballots, which makes no sense. It's absurd, and the court should be a little bit ashamed of running an argument like that. Now, Mississippi, the lower court found against us on the merits. They thought federal law didn't prohibit it. And as I highlighted there, it's kind of an easy call, isn't it? So the Fifth Circuit decision was really a dramatic victory for those of us concerned about getting back to the idea of an election day and having the law that requires an election day be vindicated. Because when you count ballots that arrive after election day, not only is it contrary to federal law, as the Fifth Circuit has affirmed at least, but it requires, it's an opportunity for voter fraud and undermines voter confidence. Now, our client in Mississippi was the Libertarian Party of Mississippi, and I'd like to thank them for pursuing justice here. The other plaintiff in the case was the Republican National Committee. Of course, the left intervened to try to stop us down there. They lost. So it's not just the state we sue. We ended up having to sue leftists because they intervened to be defendants in the cases sometimes on these election law issues. Part of the opinion reads, Congress statutorily designated a singular day for the election of members of Congress and the appointment of presidential electors. Text, precedent, and historical practice confirm this day for the election is the day by which ballots must be both cast by voters and received by state officials. Because Mississippi's statute allows ballot receipt up to 5 days after the federal election day, it is preempted by federal law. We reverse the district court's contrary judgment and remand for further proceeding. There's something else I wanted to read from here. The state's problem, and this is kind of, I encourage you to read the decision. It's educational. The court cites or references, it doesn't necessarily give us the credit, but references many of the arguments and details on the history of election law and our elections in the United States uncovered by our litigation team. So this is a Judicial Watch opinion through and through, in my view. The state's problem is that it thinks a ballot can be cast before it is received. So the government was saying, Mississippi was saying, oh, it doesn't matter if we get the ballots 5 days after Election Day because effectively the vote occurs before Election Day. Meaning it's postmarked, it means that's when the vote occurred. And it's been cast. And the court said, well, that's ridiculous. And here's their example. What if a state changes its law to allow voters to mark their ballots and place them in a drawer? Or what if a state allowed a voter to mark a ballot and then post a picture on social media? The hypotheticals are obviously absurd, but it should be equally obvious that a ballot is cast when the state takes custody of it. And the court made the point that the election is continuing if votes are, quote, being cast and received after Election Day, which is contrary to the plain reading of the federal law at issue there. And so it goes through the history of voting, the history of mail-in ballots or absentee ballots. Of course, a lot of this stuff would be obviated if there was, we got back to the traditional approach on absentee ballots, which was essentially making it rare. I mean, mail-in balloting is anathema, as I said before, to fair and free elections, and it causes issues like this. But what a victory. And it's difficult to overstate how important it is. Now, the question is, well, is it going to apply to this election? It's unlikely given what the court found here. And they reference a Supreme Court decision that, it's called the Purcell Doctrine. The Purcell Doctrine generally frowns upon messing with election processes in the run-up or close to an election. And so they basically told the lower court, keep this case going because there's a point here that Judicial Watch and others are making, but don't mess with the next election. But on the other hand, this issue is going to be a big debate even in this election. Because we've all been told that it's normal for the 18 or 19 states that do it to count ballots received after Election Day. And it ain't normal. And according to the Fifth Circuit, it's contrary to federal law. Now, the Fifth Circuit, I think their states in the Fifth Circuit are only, is it Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas? But certainly, it's going to be used and considered in other states as well, in other challenges. As Justice Kavanaugh, this is the final part of the decision. As Justice Kavanaugh recently emphasized, to state the obvious, a state cannot conduct an election without deadlines. A deadline is not unconstitutional merely because of voters' own failures to take timely steps to secure the franchise. Federal law requires voters to take timely steps to vote by Election Day, and federal law does not permit the state of Mississippi to extend the period for voting by 1 day, 5 days, or 100 days. The state's contrary law is preempted. So this is a great decision. I mean, it's everything that Judicial Watch has been saying about this for years. Now, I think it's a little bit wrong. You want to hear where I think it's wrong? In the decision, the court says, well, this doesn't mean they can't count ballots past Election Day that have been received by Election Day. And I would say that's contrary to the law that they cite here, too. If there's no deadline by which states need to count ballots, what good is having an Election Day? I mean, we saw in 2020, for the first time in American history, at least modern history, we had election results that were not obtained that told Americans, practically speaking, who won. In fact, the vote totals at the time showed that Trump won, and it was days before we found out who the winner was. Maricopa County, they announced it's going to take them 13 days to figure out the votes. Texas, right now, they count ballots that arrive up to the day after Election Day. So that, Georgia, Raffensperger, the Secretary of State, said they may not know the winner until 3 days after Election Day because they count votes, according to this decision, illegally, up till Friday. They allow overseas ballots to come in up to 3 days past Election Day. There's no provision in federal law for that. So I would submit that counting ballots received after Election Day obviously is illicit. The Fifth Circuit agrees with me on that. They don't agree, and I don't know if they don't agree in the sense that it's a finding as opposed to dicta, meaning a passing reference that, doesn't really provide any substantial legal guidance or precedence. I mean, under that theory, maybe they can count ballots forever. It just never stops. I mean, think of congressional fights where you have disputes about congressional outcomes, right? And it's up to the House or the Senate to decide, and it's happened before, who gets to be seated. I mean, think of if there's no, quote, deadline for counting ballots, that would be an inducement to just keep the election open, practically speaking. I mean, I think when federal law says you need to choose the electors on Election Day, that means you got to choose the winner and document it. And don't tell me it can't be done. Of course it can be done. Now, does it mean you don't calculate votes afterwards? Yes, but if the calculation of votes afterwards, there's votes that are provisional ballots and such like that, to the degree provisional ballots can be counted post-Election Day, there has to be justification for that in federal law. And the states are playing fast and loose with Election Day, and I think it's undermining election confidence. So I don't want to get distracted too much on this issue, but it could be a big issue in 2024 again, because I don't think ballot counting should extend past Election Day, as it's happened, they're planning to do in Michigan, how they're planning to do in Pennsylvania, in Arizona, in Georgia. And certainly this decision. And I think we're going to share it with all the 19 states that do it. Whether we sue there or not is another matter. But all the states should be on notice, and you should find out whether your state allows the counting of ballots after Election Day. And this could be a nice little activist opportunity for you, dear listener, dear viewer. Look at this first Fifth Circuit opinion. It's linked on our website. We'll link it below. And send it to the responsible officials in your state. Send it to your state legislator. Send it to your, or legislators, right? I guess some states have assemblies and senates and houses. I think there's one or two states with a unicameral body. So whoever your state representatives are, send it to the governor and send it to the leading election official, which in most states is the Secretary of State, and say, why is our law at odds with the logic in this decision? It means in Texas, too. Texas needs to fix its law now. So that's nice little activism for you all to do. Demand that they stop counting ballots received in the least after Election Day. And you'll read in this decision the logic is irrefutable. Irrefutable. It's a great, and they don't want us, to, and I just want to say something else, because I was about to get into the censorship of our talking about this. Because I sometimes don't praise Judicial Watch enough. So our election law work has been going on for well over a decade. I mean, in No, it actually more than that, 2 decades. Did you know in the year 2000, I was down in Florida with other Judicial Watch colleagues and a Judicial Watch team generally, counting ballots that were disputed in the 2000 election in Bush versus Gore? Do you know that? So we've been monitoring and dealing with election law issues for 2.5 decades here at Judicial Watch. So there are few organizations with more expertise and experience and knowledge and awareness of election issues than your Judicial Watch. And not only do we have these lawsuits, including this massively successive lawsuit in the Fifth Circuit, but we have lawsuits that have been successful over the years and other litigation and legal action to clean up the election rolls. 4 million names cleaned from the election rolls in just the last year and a half or two. We just filed a lawsuit in Oregon to clean the rolls there, as I talked about last week. And so I know the RNC has been suing on some of these issues now, which is fine. And other groups have been suing on some of these issues now. Like, for instance, our friends, I think it's at American First Legal, sued in Arizona for the list of names of voters who were found to be ineligible potentially to vote in federal elections, if I think I'm describing it correctly. Nice little victory there. So I'm glad there are other groups doing it. But respectfully to everyone else, there's no one that can match our expertise in this regard. There really isn't. And our demonstrated record of success, certainly on election law issues. So it's important that we are able to continue this work, and frankly, we only do it with your support. And as I said earlier, one great way to support Judicial Watch is to buy my new book, Rights and Freedoms in Peril. It's a Judicial Watch book, so it's a way to support Judicial Watch as well. And I was down in the Villages in Florida this week talking to a sold-out crowd of patriots. It was a MAGA group. And they just, they're very much concerned about these issues, as you might imagine. And we're very interested in my take on it, but also excited about the book as well. And we had a little video of my soldier down there. I wrote this book for Judicial Watch, Rights and Freedoms in Peril, because I'm not going to stop standing up. We have this rising radical left that is attacking our constitutional institutions that protect our rights and freedoms. And plus they're attacking them directly, specifically by going after our First Amendment free speech rights. I've never seen anything like it in American history. When Trump is censored, it means every American who follows him is censored. I'm also concerned about the way the elections are being run. Are they being run in a way that's fair and free and will have the confidence of the voters? I'm concerned it didn't happen in 2020, and I'm concerned a lot of the elements in place are going to make the 2024 election also controversial. Judicial Watch isn't going to stop standing up for constitutional government, for sovereignty, for the First Amendment, for the Constitution, for the rule of law, for life, against lawfare. I mean, we have to stand strong. That's why I think it's important people read this book so they understand what the issues are. Our rights and freedoms literally are in peril. So you can see the energy of the patriots down there. The Villages is it's kind of a well-known spot. It's I think it's 55+ community, but it's a massive, massive community. I think 150,000 people live there. But they're concerned. These are patriots who, all of them have early voted. Most of them have. They are, though, pretty serious about what they want to happen. They're serious about policy and politics, and they're also worried about the future of the country. And so this is why it's important. I think for those of you who are worried, first of all, it will explain what it is you should be worried about and as importantly, what to do about it. And one of the reasons I know that Judicial Watch is effective, it's like the old phrase, we love him for the enemies he has made. And Judicial Watch has many enemies among the cadre of corrupt politicians here in Washington, D.C. that have inhabited powerful positions. Bill and Hillary know who we are. I don't know if Obama knows who we are. You can be certainly sure that the Biden White House knows who we are. I don't know what Joe Biden knows, so I'm not even going to venture. President Trump knows who we are. But the left surely knows who we are. And they are desperate to censor us. They hate us. And we're repeatedly targeted. And we're one of many who are targeted by the left, to be fair. But we've been censored repeatedly by big tech at the behest of government, at the behest of dishonest leftists. We've been targeted by this Justice Department. Many, many years ago, we were even targeted by the IRS. So if we've suffered the slings and arrows of government abusers and their allies on the left, and we're seeing more of it just this last week. I got a call, or my colleague, our press officer, received an email from the Washington Post, a reporter at the Washington Post, earlier this week. And normally when you get a request from the Washington Post, obviously you pay attention because it's however terrible we think the Washington Post is, it is a powerful media entity, and you want to know what they're doing, especially if they're going to be reporting about you or your organization. So we paid attention to the request, and the request came in at 5. Let's go to the because I posted what they sent to us. So they sent this to us on Wednesday, October 30th at 5:16 p.m. and they said they wanted a comment for an 8 p.m. deadline. So from the get-go, it's unprofessional. They've got an 8 p.m. deadline. They send us an email after hours. After hours? Wanting a comment, and look at what they were asking about. I'm working on a piece about the role of podcasts. I don't even know what are playing in casting doubt on the integrity of the 2024 election. The piece includes interviews with researchers, which you can be sure are leftists, who say podcasts are an especially effective medium for such claims because of how technically challenging it is for companies to do content moderation. So content moderation is the left-wing code for censorship. That's what content moderation is. And the Washington Post, being a leftist activist group that sometimes does journalism, this is what they described they were doing, targeting Judicial Watch and others. Their analysis found that the Charlie Kirk Show, and Charlie is one of the most effective conservatives in the country. He runs Turning Point USA, the nonprofit. He has a PAC and other political action-oriented groups that he's also running. Powerful voice because of his social media presence as well. And the story specifically mentions an exchange Kirk had with Tom Fitton on an October 18th episode of the show titled "Fixing Elections is Easy," which is why the left fights so hard against it. In the conversation, Kirk asks Fitton whether the election is fixed, and Fitton responds that the voting process is structured in Arizona and Pennsylvania to steal the election if need be. And then they quote me further, if you normalize the counting of ballots after Election Day, which is what I've been talking about, right? And the Fifth Circuit is, or at least partly agree with me, that sure makes it easier to for fraudsters to come in and manipulate the outcome. So I saw this and I got mad. You know, it's 5 o'clock. I work later than many other people do, but I don't like working later, and I don't like having to work late to deal with a crisis like this. A left-wing reporter for a powerful media group throwing out garbage inquiries like this, obviously to try to destroy and censor us. And this is my response to her. No, go back to the email. Stop trying to get me and Judicial Watch censored by invoking leftists who hate the First Amendment and free speech. Your inquiry is another reason Bezos, is it Bezos or Bezos? Bezos needs to clean house at the Post, because there's been controversy about Bezos acknowledging that the Post is full of leftists and no one takes it seriously. This is why no one takes the Washington Post seriously, because of agenda pushing leftists like this reporter. And as I respond, so the Post then published this story. Let's bring the story up. Go down to, in an episode of the Charlie Kirk Show last week, the host who leads the pro-Trump youth group, Turning Point USA, asked his guests whether the election is fixed. Tom Fitton, head of the conservative group Judicial Watch, responded by falsely claiming, so that's the smear, falsely claiming that it is illegal for votes to be counted after Election Day. How is an opinion false, even though some states explicitly mandate that practice? By the way, this was written after the Fifth Circuit ruling. I mean, so it's really egregious that she smeared me in this regard, and Judicial Watch, and Charlie. He said the voting processes in Arizona and Pennsylvania is structured in a manner to steal the election if need be. Is there any doubt? I talked about the post-election day counting. It's outrageous. It undermines voter confidence and invites fraud. How is that even a controversial comment? If you normalize the counting, and this is an accurate quote, I don't understand what's controversial about it. If you normalize the counting of ballots after Election Day, boy, that sure makes it easier for fraudsters to come in and manipulate the outcome. Fitton's comments echo false claims. Again, there's that word false that Trump made in 2020 when he said he had won the race because he was ahead. It's not a false claim. It's an argument that should have been taken seriously legally. He should have probably pursued it legally more aggressively than his team did. But it's still a legal argument, partly vindicated by this decision that, at least in the least, says counting ballots that arrive after Election Day is illegal. So this is a smear operation. And here's what I responded to. That's how I responded to it on Twitter, or X. You know, we obtained this Fifth Circuit victory, and it didn't stop the activists. Here are the reporters: Kate Zakarzewski, Naomi Nix, and Jeremy B. Merrill. Those are their handles, from smearing me by dishonestly characterizing as false my expert Judicial Watch opinion that counting ballots after election is unlawful under federal law. Now, I purposely put in the word expert. I know the left doesn't want to take that seriously because the left hates everyone that they disagree with. But I'm an expert, and Judicial Watch is an expert on election processes. I've been doing this for 26 years at Judicial Watch. I've testified to Congress on the issue. Judicial Watch has one of the top legal teams on the country on issues of election integrity and law. And so if it's my opinion that federal law prohibits the counting of ballots received after Election Day, which it does in all sorts of circumstances, and if it's my opinion that even counting ballots after Election Day is illicit, it ain't false. It's my opinion stated in good faith. Let's go back to the tweet because I forget what else I yelled about. both the Washington Post and the New York Times. So there was a New York Times story similarly pushing for censorship of content. Almost, I think it would appear the day before the Washington Post story. So here are the interview segments that Jeff Bezos' activist employees, he really needs to clean house over there, don't want you to see. The segments I had, the interview was part of the, you should watch the entire interview with Charlie Kirk. But here are the sections that the Post smeared me over, and I want you to see the complete comments so you have a fuller understanding of what the points I was making in my conversation with Charlie Kirk about elections. And I was on talking about the book, Rights and Freedoms in Peril. Let's go to the tape.
It's the question of, is it fixed or is it fixed? Right? So it's the fixed can have two different words. So
they've structured the voting process in places like Arizona or up in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania to make it easier to steal the election if need be. So if you normalize the counting of ballots after Election Day, boy, that sure makes it easier for fraudsters to come in and manipulate the outcome. And they don't care if voters get nervous about it because it's all about winning. In 2020, he had the votes to win on election night, right? And that result was changed as a result of unprecedented, and I would argue unlawful counting that occurred for days after Election Day. And I tell you, if we don't know who won on election night, I think it's going to be very unpleasant in terms of what the outcomes are in terms of voter confidence.
How was that controversial? You know, outrageously, YouTube a year ago wouldn't have let me raise those issues about 2020 because they said you can't ask questions about elections and they would kick you off. They've changed that since then. Straightforward analysis. I mean, the whole argument over election integrity is we want stronger rules in place because it makes it easier to set up the steal, if need be, for any party. And it's the left that opposes all these election integrity measures, that want to count ballots forever and a day, that oppose voter ID, want non-citizens to remain on the voter rolls. That is the position of this Biden-Harris administration. Told the Supreme Court to let them do it. And what's the response from the Washington Post? Take Fitton's video down. Take Charlie Kirk's video down. Don't let them talk about post-election day counting. Don't let them ask questions about government abuse, government misconduct. Don't let them ask questions about Biden-Harris's election victory. Don't let them ask questions about the next election. And frankly, the good news is the article being published the week before the election shows they're upset because there hasn't been the censorship they had last time around. And that thankfully is largely due to Elon Musk, in my view. And obviously Republicans have been putting pressure now that they're back in control of the House on the issue as well. But Musk has really set the standard in many ways to allow a fuller debate on these issues, making it harder, not stopping completely, but making it harder for censorship to continue. But it's obviously a coordinated effort because the New York Times had a story the night before stated October 31st. Maybe it was the same day. When it was the same day. Yeah, it was the same day. So they had two stories. New York Times, Washington Post puts out two stories saying that people aren't being censored enough by YouTube or on the, quote, podcast. The election falsehoods take off as on YouTube as it looks the other way. So YouTube is still a mess when it comes to certain election controversies. I mean, you may have seen how they vandalize content. I know they vandalize our content with disclaimers that, you know, go look here for the truth on elections and things like that, suggesting the content's off. That's censorship and suppression. And they don't reference Judicial Watch in this material, but they talk about how this whole story is based on research done by a radical extremist left-wing group called Media Matters that hates conservatives and wants to ensure that they have no voice on anywhere in the media. And they try to controversialize all comments by conservatives in order to get them censored, suppressed, destroy their advertising, you name it. And I'm like, well, we weren't mentioned here, but I wonder who else is on the list that Media Matters was targeting. And sure enough, let's go to the Media Matters story. Oh, here we are. I'm on the list. Judicial Watch is on the list. And dear viewer, dear listener, if you are a supporter of Judicial Watch, it means they're thinking of you as well. And they're suggesting, what's the title of this report? Go all the way to the top. YouTube let right-wing figures undermine the 24 elections even before any votes were cast. Pushed election misinformation, right? Which is code for information that should be censored. They want to trigger censorship. So scroll down and see what they were saying about Judicial Watch. So let's bring it up again. Bring up the Media Matters piece. Do you have the Media Matters piece? There it is. Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton argued, quote, the 2024 election has already been compromised, and announced plans by his organization to sue states to overcome the election rigging. I don't know what that last one was. Maybe it's from a speech I made in 2021 that they seem to reference, or somewhere, I don't know what they're talking about. So what's the issue with saying the 2024 election has already been compromised? It's a straightforward complaint about the Biden Justice Department. Oh, by the way, saying that the Biden Justice Department compromised the election with illicit prosecutions of Trump, they say that's false. And there's no evidence of that. That's the less mantra. Media, and including supposedly regular media entities, regularly say that you're not allowed to say that. That's false. And the reference they're doing is they're pointing to a speech I made to CPAC, and which is a conservative meeting, big convention that takes place every year here in the D.C. area. And here's how I opened the speech, and here's the speech, at least part of the speech, they didn't want you to see.
But frankly, got to begin with some bad news. It's too late. The 2024 election has already been compromised by the Biden Democratic Party's unprecedented prosecutorial assault on the civil rights of President Donald J. Trump. There is a storm front of selective, vindictive, political, and anti-constitutional prosecutions going from Miami up through Fulton County, Georgia, to here in D.C., and of course up into New York. And the front has expanded to other states where lawyers, Republican Party officials, and volunteers are being harassed, sued, disbarred, and prosecuted for exercising their God-given First Amendment and other rights to dispute an election. You know, let me be clear. Moving to jail the leading presidential candidate, seizing his assets, destroying his business, and keeping his name off the ballot are all about turning America into a one-party state. You know, by the way, isn't fraudulently using the 14th Amendment and falsely accusing Trump of insurrection to keep him off the ballot insurrection in itself? If those abusers want to play the insurrectionist game, then virtually the entire deep state left media and D.C. ruling class will have some questions to answer.
It's a good little speech, huh? I'm glad Media Matters attacked me and attacked Judicial Watch, because there's some good points there to consider before the election, because the election has been compromised by these abuses of Trump. And the only question is, will the compromised nature of the elections undermine the outcome in a way that people aren't confident that what happened was legit? How's that, quote, misinformation? They want to censor us, okay? And this is an issue that I've raised. I don't know if I've raised it on this program before, but I want to raise it again with you either way because of the election coming up. Now, you may be upset about the outcome of the election, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. And this message is in terms of those of us concerned about conservative public policy outcomes and the continued protection of our Republican form of government, the U.S. Constitution, and our rights and civil liberties, our freedoms, our sovereignty, etc. Those issues won't go away if Harris is elected, obviously, and they won't go away if Trump is elected. The left isn't going to stop trying to destroy the Supreme Court, the rule of law, the First Amendment, promote open borders, allow aliens to vote in the elections. They're not going to stop any of that. They're not going to stop their diversity mania to destroy America through repackaged Marxism in a way that separates us by race and division and segregation. The left ain't going to stop. Now, the challenges will be different depending on who the president is. The challenges will be different depending on who controls Congress. But the concerns we have as to what needs to be done to defend the republic and kind of restore the rule of law or strengthen it, the left isn't going to stop messing with efforts to ensure fair and clean elections. And the left isn't going to stop opposing that. So no matter who's president, no matter who runs Congress, same goes to whatever elections are happening in your local community or in your states. The issues never go away. And I would argue your obligation as a citizen to be a watchdog, to be vigilant, never stops. So this censorship issue, obviously they've got this timing issue. It's before the election. They're trying to scare big tech platforms into censoring me, censoring you, censoring other conservatives, Charlie Kirk. Who else is in this? I can see pictures. Ben Shapiro, Kash Patel, Tim Pool, Tucker Carlson, Rudy Giuliani. They want to censor them. You think they're going to stop on Election Day? No. And Judicial Watch has been in not only kind of pushing back, obviously, as I'm talking about in this program, but we've been litigating on the issue, exposing the improper censorship, suing to stop the improper censorship. And we're not going to stop. And Media Matters, the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Biden White House, the Harris White House, assuming it comes to be, some deep stater in the Trump administration who doesn't like what we're doing, some state government official who doesn't like what we're doing, we're not going to back down. We're going to continue to stand strong for the rule of law, clean and fair elections. If we don't have clean and fair elections, everything else is for naught. If we don't get to select who runs the country in a way that's legit, we've lost. So we will continue with the heavy lifting no matter the opponent. And we're able to do it. And the reason they're targeting us is because we've got such strong support from you, the American people. And I hope it continues. Oh, yeah. By the way, it's still going on. By the way, because I was thinking about that Washington Post piece. There was just a story up in Pennsylvania that they were messing with voters waiting in line in Bucks County, improperly telling them to go home. And the left is like yelling at us for exposing that and yelling at Trump for being upset about it. I mean, the Washington Post is just horrible. Did you see this? I don't know. Do we have the video still of you, Hewitt? So Hewitt is a radio talk show host, writer. He's a contributing writer, op-ed columnist for the Washington Post. And he was on with two leftists on the Washington Post talking about the election controversies that may ensue as disputes arise related to the election. Here, let's just go to the tape here.
Me, or does it seem like this week Donald Trump is laying the groundwork for contesting the election by complaining that cheating was taking place in Pennsylvania by suing Bucks County for alleged irregularities? And this is on top of his continual assertion that if he loses, it's because of cheating.
Yeah, that's what he's been laying the groundwork for this, just not in the last week, but in the last umpty-ump months. No election can be fair in Donald Trump's mind, unless Donald Trump wins it. And I think we are going to see him both rev up his supporters to contest elections outside of courtrooms and go to every courtroom he can in America where it's relevant to make whatever arguments he can, no matter how far-fetched. We saw
Jonathan,
that
I've
work
got
out last time, but it didn't work out this time.
Finish, Hugh.
It may not work. That may not happen this time. And now I'll let you go, Hugh.
Well, I've just got to say, we're news people, even though we're at the opinion section. It's got to be reported. Bucks County was reversed by the court and instructed to open up extra days because they violated the law and told people to go home. So that lawsuit was brought by the Republican National Committee, and it was successful. The Supreme Court ruled that Glenn Youngkin was successful. We are news people, even though we have opinions, and we have to report the whole story if we bring up part of the story. So yes, he's upset about Bucks County, but he was right, and he won in court. That's the story.
I'll let you keep going, Jonathan.
No, I don't appreciate being lectured about reporting when many times you come here saying lots of things that aren't.
I won't come back, Jonathan. I'm done.
What?
I'm done. This is the most unfair election ad I have ever been a part of. You guys are working. That's fine. I'm done.
Well, I don't blame Mr. Hewitt for leaving, and evidently he quit writing after that. That's how awful the Washington Post is. And that's the company that's targeting your Judicial Watch. And that's what they think of anyone who dares to dispute anything in the elections. It's snark, nasty, partisan leftist ideology that is guiding coverage of our elections. And you need to understand that as these debates ensue. You know, one of the other issues out there, moving on to another topic, another element of the crisis, is the failures of the Secret Service to protect the life of President Trump adequately. He was almost killed twice, in Butler and then down in Florida. And Judicial Watch has been second to none in exposing over the years the failures, dysfunction, politics, and corruption of the Secret Service. And even after you had this crisis of Secret Service failures around Trump's assassination attempt, the assassination attempt on Trump in Butler, it was so dysfunctional, everyone's expecting, you might think they'd get their act together in a kind of an emergency fashion. No, no, no. It's Keystone Cops, contempt for the rule of law, cover-up, corruption, etc. And I think I announced last week or 2 weeks ago that we sued over the Secret Service essentially breaking into the office of a citizen to just hang out, them and local law enforcement, use it as a bathroom and just use it as a place to rest. And there's something called the Fourth Amendment, among other things, that prevent that type of abuse. And the Secret Service lied about it. And of course, we asked for documents about the scandal, and we got, again, the proverbial hand to the face, and so we sued in federal court. And as a result, we got documents. 62 pages of records were turned over to Judicial Watch after our lawsuit. When did we file the lawsuit? It's almost contemporaneous with the filing of the lawsuit. Oh, wait, no, we filed the lawsuit in... Do you have the lawsuit? Can you click on the lawsuit? Tell me what the date is. Go to the last page. Or it should be on the top of the document as well. Okay, go down and click on the caption on the end of the first paragraph there. Judicial Watch. Yeah, there you are. Pull it down. Okay, so we filed it. Yeah, it was longer ago than I thought. 9/26. September 26th. We got these documents 2 weeks later, October 15th, where they were sent to us. 62 pages. We asked for documents about this video and the subsequent invasion of this person's office by local law enforcement. Invasion might be a strong word, but unlawful intrusion. And here's the video of a Secret Service agent, it looks like, covering up what was about to happen. There you have her come up. She sees the video, camera. Now in the documents they pretend, well, it showed a spot they thought they shouldn't be showed, so they needed to cover it up, but it's clear that wasn't the case. They were just doing it because they were going to do something that was improper. Here she comes, gets a chair, stands up, and there you have her. I don't know, maybe you can even hear her pulling the tape in this audio. Yeah, I think you can. And there you go. So the documents are really incredible. And I encourage you to read the entire material. This is the headline. Records confirm agent on Harris Secret Service detail broke into Massachusetts hair salon and taped over security camera. So they were playing games as to what happened, right? And we got the emails showing the admissions that they did what they were that he had been accused of doing. The records show one agent telling colleagues that by covering the hair salon's external security camera with tape, the Secret Service was, quote, mitigating threats. Do you believe that? I mean, it's one thing to lie to us, but are they lying to themselves? They wanted to use the restroom, and they knew this place was closed because they probably, I think, according to the documents that. You know, the woman had said they'd been through so many times for security reasons already with, you know, checking for bombs and things like that as they do prepping for a visit, because it was a Kamala Harris visit up in Massachusetts, that, you know, she said, well, I'm just going to close. But they were all familiar with her place. Secret Service agent in New York field office states in a July email, the owner called the duty desk saying she has pictures of agents going into the house, covering up cameras and using the bathroom. And then they list the address. She just wanted to know who had given permission to go inside and use the space. The Harris detail official forwards the email to an official in the TSD, the Technical Security Division. The building in question, someone responded, is blank. It's redacted. It was a multi-story building with a salon on the ground floor and residence above. I entered the day prior, but during working hours, to ask one of the employees about X. Redacted. I have no knowledge of any teams assigned entering the building at any time. And then he just opines that maybe someone on the balcony above let them in. Well, you know, nothing So he didn't have anything to offer. Someone else says, also, I was informed after the visit by the arrival departure agent, Special Agent Secret Service name redacted, that local PD were utilizing the bathroom within the building. The Vice Presidential Division, VPD, did not give permission to use this facility. So they're blaming the locals. A critical systems protection agent informed us of a camera vulnerability located on the hair salon facing the area departure area. I was informed that attempts were made to contact owners, but unsuccessful. They have a special agent mitigated threats due to covering the exterior camera. So their excuse is that they needed to cover the camera to mitigate threats. Not serious. Then, when you look at the documents, it's just email chain after email chain. And it's really a kind of a useful insight to the way government bureaucracies respond to negative press inquiries, because the press was asking about this, because she started complaining. The thread worked its way up to Brian Lambert, who is Assistant Director in the Office of Investigations. And he wants to know who was there. So they started getting names of other Secret Service agents who were assigned to the area on that day. Doesn't look like any of our people. They'd look at the tape, other than the female with the tape. So it was one of their people. It was a Secret Service agent. It wasn't a local police official. It was a Secret Service agent, these documents confirm, who covered up the camera. And this is the kicker. The special agent in charge at the Secret Service Boston field office, so a senior agent up in Boston, emails the Pittsfield Police Department. The Boston agent writes, "Hi, Chief, hoping all is well in Pittsfield. Quick question for you. Regarding the video from the salon, were the individuals who went inside ever identified?" After I reviewed it, the police chief responds, it appears 2 females were EMS county ambulance, 1 Secret Service agent, and 1 state police. Hope all is well. And then they respond to Business Insider. I think it's in the documents here. I think because I called it up. Did a Secret Service officer pick the lock of a door? So the proposed response is no. No one from the Secret Service picked the lock of the door. Secret Service personnel did not ask for permission, and they suggested that that none of the people who entered the salon were Secret Service agents. Well, the chief said otherwise. So you've got this internal issue about the truth here. What else did I flag? Essentially, the Secret Service agent and a Secret Service person supposedly gave permission for all of this to take place. They directed people that they could enter the salon. That's what I think is in the documents, if I recall correctly. And according to Fox News, they apologized to the woman. Because she says to Fox, she's told Fox, they apologized to me, but they issued a statement which was a non-apology, saying, we respect people's rights. me give you the story there. Fox News, the U.S. Secret Service. So it's in the documents. They're giving us news stories. Fox News, the Secret Service was forced to apologize to a Massachusetts salon owner after using her building's bathroom without permission. They broke into her building by picking the lock, then allowed various people to use the salon's bathroom over a 2-hour period. Powers told Business Insider she was aware she had to close her salon, but was not informed the Secret Service had other plans for her office. They had a bunch of people in and out doing a couple of bomb sweeps again. Totally understand that they had to do that due to the nature of the situation. At that point, my team felt it was like a little chaotic, and we just made the decision to close. There were several people in and out for an hour and a half just using my bathroom, the alarms going off, using my counter with no permission. And then when they were done using the bathroom for 2 hours, they left and left my building completely unlocked and did not take the tape off the camera. So they left her place unsecure. Secret Service said that it had been in contact with Powers following the incident. The business owner said she received an apology from the Secret Service Boston's office. So they're telling folks internally they had nothing to do with it, and they're apologizing to the woman for doing it. Which is it? Powers said that an EMS worker told her the Secret Service agent in charge of security that day was telling people to come in and use the bathroom. So I was right. I did remember it correctly. So, do you trust the Secret Service to protect President Trump? Do you trust them even to protect Kamala Harris? I don't. I don't trust them to protect any of the protectees, given the current failures evident in the way they operate. You have this DEI issue, you have this politicization, this nasty bureaucratic infighting and mismanagement, all of which has been uncovered by Judicial Watch. I mean, imagine if it was your home broken into or your office is broken into. Have you read the Declaration of Independence recently? You know what this reminds me of? I'm going to call it up. I know it's getting late, but I want to talk about it. Those of you who know, you know what I'm talking about, right? You know what I'm going to point out to, right? So the Declaration, for those of you who haven't read it recently, it's kind of an indictment of the King of England and the abusers in Parliament of the rights of the colonies. And one of the big issues that they had was following. Was the quartering of troops. For the quartering of large bodies of armed troops among us. So essentially, troops were quartered within the colonies, and individual households and businesses had to essentially take care of them, despite whatever objections they had. Now, is this the same as quartering large bodies of troops? No, it is not, obviously, but it's what it reminded me of. Like the government sending in law enforcement to hang out in your house or your private property, your business. It goes beyond being anti-constitutional. It's actually anti-American in the sense of the Declaration of Independence. And Judicial Watch has uncovered more of the truth about it. So, you know, it's been quite this few years here in Washington, D.C. You know, we had this controversy over the 2020 election. We had an impeachment of Biden, we had an impeachment of Trump for daring to dispute the 2020 election. We've had retaliatory prosecutions against Trump, vicious attacks on Americans by the millions through censorship, abuses by the Biden-Harris administration in terms of contempt for the rule of law that had to be repeatedly curtailed by the Supreme Court. And in response, they want to destroy the Supreme Court. We've had a border invasion like we've never seen before in American history, like no country has seen before in world history. We had a president who was removed from the head of a ticket through a coup. And we have the man who was the target of some of the worst abuses by the U.S. government in terms of targeting any one man in American history, Donald Trump, who is now the leading candidate for president. So it's been a remarkable several years. And through it all, your Judicial Watch has been the lodestar, right? In terms of trying to get the rule of law enforced, highlighting the abuses, being abused for highlighting the abuses. And as I said, we are going to have another election. There's going to be an outcome one way or the other, right? But I can tell you, no matter what happens, Judicial Watch knows what to do. We've been through many presidential administrations. We're going to know what to do for the next one, no matter who it is, in terms of holding the administration accountable, holding Congress accountable, and defending the Constitution, the rule of law, and demanding transparency under law, and suing over abuses and protecting those Americans who are subject to any abuses. So no matter who wins, you can trust Judicial Watch to be your watchdog in Washington in terms of defending the rule of law and defending our republic. So with that, hopefully we know who is going to be the next president, who will be controlling Congress the next time we visit with each other on the Weekly Update. But until then, God bless you and God bless America. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.